everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today for my April wrap-up. Let's talk about a few stats quickly and then we can talk about the books that I read in April. I had a really great reading month this month with some fantastic books, and you can see that from the fact that my average rating was 4.25. So yeah, an amazing reading month. I read 1,750 pages of physical books. Having said that though, I also read the entirety of what is currently on Webtoons of Heartstopper. I don't know how to figure out the page numbers for that because I read it on Webtoons. So yeah, I read 1,750 physical pages and then a bunch of Webtoon pages, whatever that equals. I read 5 books and then a Webtoons. It works out to be 4 volumes in the actual physical graphic novel form, but I didn't read them that way. I read them on Webtoons, so again, not sure what that equals. My favourite book of the month, well, my favourite reading thing of the month, don't know how to classify it, but my favourite thing that I read this month was Heartstopper, and my least favourite book that I read this month was Normal People. So, yeah, that's a brief overview of all the stats. Other details of stats will come up in my stats game that I play every month as well. But yeah, that's just the brief sort of stats to let you know how my month was. So I always talk about the books mostly in order, or certainly in order of how I have written them down. So the first book that I read, or the first book that I finished, was Normal People by Sally Rooney. I liked this one. I gave it 3.5 stars, which was 6.86 on Corepile. So yeah, like I said, 3.5 stars. So it's certainly in the sort of upper echelon of ratings, but it was definitely the book that I liked the least this month. So it is a literary fiction and we follow 2 characters, Connell and Marianne, and it is about them growing up in the same small town and then going off to university. When they're in high school, they form a relationship, but it's very secreted, and so nobody knows that they are in a relationship. Then when they go off to university, they don't realise, I don't think, that they are going to the same university. Marianne kind of pretty much reinvents herself as the cool girl, and then Connell becomes part of her friendship group, and then they reignite their relationship, but again, it's very on the down low. So it's kind of I wouldn't say it was a romance I mean, it's got romantic tropes, absolutely, but it certainly doesn't have the happy ending romance that you would expect. It is much more literary fiction than contemporary because it is quite meandering and it follows the kind of just minutiae of their lives and what happens between them. I thought this was quite well written and very easy to read. I read this in one day. I mean, it's not super long, but I don't do that very much these days, so I was pretty impressed with that. Yeah, so like I said, it's kind of just following the kind of minutiae of their lives and following a lot of the kind of smaller moments that come together to make a relationship. There's nothing huge that happens, and we don't follow a relationship from start to middle to finish. We just kind of have little moments that make up their relationship. So like I said, I thought it was very well written. It's written in quite I wouldn't call it lyrical. It's not like something like, definitely not like an Erin Morgenstern, but it's not even like a Joanne Harris in the lyrical writing style, but it does have kind of a flowing feel, which I do often associate with literary fiction. Yeah, so I did enjoy it, but I didn't love it. I respect that it was well written. I respect the writing style. I respect what Sally Rooney was doing with the story, but it was okay. I liked it enough that I finished it, and I definitely think that there are people who would appreciate it a lot more than me. So I don't think I'm going to reread it, and I'm glad I read it, and like I said, I did enjoy it, but nothing super memorable. Then I read The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwith. This is the first book in the... Does it say on here what series it is in? don't think that it does. This is the first book in a trilogy, I think, and we follow Claire, who is a librarian in hell, and she is the librarian who is in charge of the Unwritten wing. So what that means is that anyone who has ever written half a story, written a draft, had a story in their head, and that has never actually been put out into the world and read by other people, so whether that be published, self-published, put online, whatever, something that has been formulated and created but not written and read by other people, those stories still exist in the kind of ether, and they form part of the Library of the Unwritten. Now, in hell, the Library of the Unwritten, there are other aspects, other parts of the library, but in hell, the Library of the Unwritten is not a static shelves full of books like we have here. Stories are very magical. Stories have kind of a life of their own. So the librarian is in charge of making sure that all the stories stay where they're supposed to be, that no one escapes or stories don't go off reinventing themselves and that sort of thing. The first sign that something odd is going on is that Hero escapes from his book and goes in search of his author. So Claire goes with her, assistant. Claire goes with her assistant to retrieve Hero and put him back in his book, but that action puts her in the path of some angels, and then they realise there's a lot more going on than what they thought, and that some other things that are probably slightly more dangerous than just an unwritten book or unwritten character escaping have started, and Claire and Hero and Brevity, which is her assistant, go on this adventure through hell and through earth and through various different dimensions to try and figure out what's going on and put a stop to it. I thought this was incredibly well written. I actually took quite a while to read this one, but that was just because I was enjoying it and enjoying taking my time with it. I didn't want to rush through it. I didn't want to miss anything. Yeah, so like I said, I thought it was really well written. I really enjoyed the characters. I thought that they were really strong characters, really well put together. I really enjoyed the concept of the stories existing and having their own magic and their own personalities without having the idea that it's not static. That's not a new concept. Certainly this isn't the first book that I've read like this, but I always really enjoy that type of story when I come across them, so I was really happy to read this one. Like I said, really enjoyed this one, and yeah, the characters are probably my favourite things, although the whole thing I thought was really well done. Gave it 8.14 in Corpile, which is a 4.5 stars. So yeah, definitely up there as one of my favourite books of the month, and highly recommend. Then I read Like a Charm by Elle McNichol, which I have had to take back to the library, so the image will be here. This one is a middle grade, and we follow, I cannot remember the main character's name. We follow the main character. When she's young, she has an experience which really affects her, but also affects her family and causes a rift between her parents and her grandparents, and so she grows up not knowing a lot of her family. Then when she is 13 or 14, they move back to Edinburgh, where the family is from, and unfortunately her grandfather dies. She attends the funeral, her parents don't, and attending that funeral, she starts to learn some more things about her grandfather, about the world around her, and learning that perhaps there's more going on in the world than she thought, particularly more to do with what might be real and what might not be real. So it is a fantasy based in our world, but with supernatural beings. We have fairies, we have sirens and different characters like that. It is middle grade, like I said, so it is very fast-paced. It's really beautifully written. The main character has dyspraxia, which is a condition that affects the motor skills. I believe it also affects muscle density and different things like that. So it does make it difficult for her to do things like hold pencils and run and different things like that. And there's a lot of conversation around that and the effects that that has on her life, also around the different ways that the adults around her, their approaches to how to help her, and attempting to modify her to fit into the world rather than trying to modify the world so that she has the best access to it. There's quite a bit of conversation around equity and around inclusion, which I thought was really, really fantastic. I thought it was done really, really well. It was done in a way that I think that was very approachable. So children will understand it and appreciate what is being said, but I also thought that it was very approachable for adults. Elle McNichol is an autistic author, so although this particular book didn't deal with autism, really see that she has an awareness of divergencies and how being a neurodivergent person can affect living in a world that is created for neurotypicals. So that was really well done, like I said, and I really, really enjoyed that. I actually think this is a fantastic book that should be in primary and secondary high schools, because I just think that it's a fantastic resource. I really think that children who have autism or are in other ways not neurotypical will really appreciate seeing themselves represented. Elle McNichol has written a number of other books. This is her first foray into the fantasy genre, but she's written a number of books and they all have great neurodivergent representation. So I'm definitely intending to read some more of her books. I highly recommend that if you happen to be a teacher or parent or librarian, that you get the books by Elle McNichol, particularly if you work in a school, into your classroom, into the library, because I really do think that this is a fantastic resource for children, not just who are neuroatypical, but children who are neurotypical, to learn about what it is like to experience the world from a neuroatypical point of view. So yeah, I just thought it was really fantastic. It was also just really fun, really enjoyable. I really enjoyed the characters. I thought that it was, like I said, fun, fast-paced, well-written, very approachable, and definitely something that I really, really enjoyed. So I gave it 8.29 on Callpile, and that is also 4.5 stars, as you can see, slightly above actually the Library of the Unwritten, although I think that I enjoyed the story of the Library Unwritten a little bit more, but I just really loved the approach that Elle McNichol took with the story, and I just really loved the way that those neurotypical experiences were represented, so highly recommend. The next book that I read was Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. So this is another book that I really, really, really enjoyed as well. I read this for my In Real Life book club, which used to be the Book into Film Club, but is now just a book club. So we read this because we are deciding our books by doing a genre wheel and then picking a book out of the genre. So we got literary fiction, and this is the book that everyone thought sounded the most interesting. Like I said, I really, really enjoyed this one. I love the writing style. This is the kind of writing that I absolutely adore. Very kind of lyrical, very kind of whimsical, really makes you feel like you are, weirdly enough, makes you feel like you are reading poetry, even though I don't really read poetry, so go figure. But yeah, I just really love this kind of writing style. Without being overly explanatory, it's very descriptive. Her metaphor and similes are just beautiful, really, really well put together. How this book is sort of sold is that it is about Shakespeare and about his son Hamnet, who died when he was young and was the inspiration behind Hamlet, the play, which it is those things, but I was surprised because it's actually more about Shakespeare's wife Agnes and about their experiences of forming their relationship and getting married than the experiences of the children, the two twins, Judith and Hamnet getting sick, and how Hamnet dies, and then how that then leads him to writing Hamlet. So I was expecting it to be more about the actual process of writing Hamlet, but it really wasn't anything of that. At the end of the book, you do see some of Hamlet, and you do see Agnes's reaction to seeing the play, but you don't see Shakespeare actually writing the play at all. You do see quite a bit about Shakespeare's family, particularly when he was a young man, and then his burgeoning relationship with Agnes, how that came about, and then, like I said, you follow the family as Hamnet gets quite ill and his death. But like yeah, like I said, we mostly follow Agnes. I did really enjoy it. I'm not upset that that is the case. I thought it was incredibly well written. Like I said, I really liked Agnes's character. I love the way she was portrayed. Yeah, so I really, really enjoyed it, and I wasn't upset by it. I was just surprised by it. I would highly recommend this if you enjoy literary fiction in general, if you enjoy historical fiction, so it's a historical literary fiction. If you like Shakespeare, yeah, I think that it is just a really well written, really, really enjoyable book to read. It was actually incredibly easy to read. I find literary fiction can be a little bit hit or miss for me. Sometimes I really enjoy it and I find it really easy to read, and sometimes it's a bit more difficult, mostly because the focus of literary fiction isn't so much the story as it is the kind of more writing and characters, which is definitely the case in this one. In Core Pile, I gave this one, I didn't write down what I gave in Core Pile, but it worked out to be a 4 stars, so still definitely very, very high on my rating scale, and yeah, really, really enjoyed this one. Next up, we have Heartstopper. So, as most people know, if they've been in the world at all recently, Heartstopper was created into a television program and it aired a couple of weeks ago to great acclaim, and everyone absolutely loved it. So of course I had to watch the TV show, and I also absolutely loved it, completely obsessed with it. I've now watched it a few times now. Not going to say how many times, but I've watched the TV show a lot. But of course, I also then went down the rabbit hole of wanting to read all of the graphic novels. I don't own the graphic novels. If you guys have been around for any amount of time, you know that I am not a massive graphic novel reader. I've started to get a little bit more into graphic novels recently. I've been reading Stand Still, Stay Silent by Mina Sondberg, which is a graphic novel that Rowan purchased recently that he really enjoyed. I've been really enjoying those. So I've started to get more into graphic novels, but they're just not something that I really grew up reading, so they're not something that I've been particularly interested in. The point of all that being that is why I had never read the Heartstopper graphic novels, even though I have heard nothing but amazing things about the series since I started BookTube 2 and a bit years ago. So I've heard all about how amazing the graphic novels are. I had read, I think, what amounts to about a quarter maybe of the first volume before, but reading online isn't something that I super enjoy, which is another reason why I hadn't gone down that road. Like I said, I don't own the graphic novels, and that's again because I'm not a huge graphic novel reader, but also graphic novels in Australia are pretty pricey. Anyway, the point being that watched the TV show, absolutely loved it, and decided I really needed to just get over myself and read the graphic novels, but of course I don't own them, so I read them on Webtoons. Really, really, really loved the graphic novel series. I just really enjoy Alice Oseman's portrayal of these characters. I just think that they're beautiful characters. They're honestly characters that when I was at school, were I to have known characters like this, I would have really liked them. I would have been potentially friends with them. They're just really sweet, really lovely, really, really well written characters. To be honest with you, I don't know, had I read the graphic novels or the webtoons without having watched the show and absolutely fallen in love with the show, I don't know whether I would have given the graphic novels 5 stars like I have done without the influence of the TV show, because I love the TV show. I just adore it. It is amazing. So it's very possible that I would have enjoyed the graphic novels but not loved. So that's another reason why I feel a little bit uncertain of how to kind of talk about it, because the vast majority of my feelings about the graphic novels are very much tied in with my feelings about the television program. However, I read the webtoons version of the graphic novels. I loved them. I gave them 5 stars. Nick and Charlie are just absolute sweethearts, fantastic characters. I like the writing, the art style. I think that it's very simple but beautiful. I love the way Alice Oseman focuses in on quite small but really significant details. For example, in the graphic novels, she will focus in on a particular moment in time, particular movement. So there's a lot of looking at their feet, but I actually think that it tells you a lot about the story and what's happening between them. So although the art style is quite simple, it's very effective and very purposeful and meaningful. So yeah, highly recommend these graphic novels, highly recommend the TV show. Absolutely loved it. Now wish to read everything Alice Oseman has ever written, which at some point I no doubt will. Also, I've ordered the graphic novels. They'll be coming in a haul soon. The final book that I read in the month of April was The Yield by Tara June Winch. Loved this one as well on Corpile. I, again, didn't write down what I gave it on Corpile, but I gave it 4 stars. So again, really, really enjoyed this one. I think this kind of pretty much straddles the line between contemporary and literary fiction. So there are literary fiction elements to it in the way that it's structured, in the writing style, but it is definitely very contemporary. We follow a variety of different points of view and a variety of different kind of ways of those points of views being expressed, which is another reason why I would put it more on the literary fiction side than just plain contemporary. So we follow August, who is an Aboriginal Australian woman, and she grew up in a country town. So they call it Murrumbidgee in the book, but that's not an actual place, but it's based on the Murray River, or Murrumbidgee River. So it's out in that area of New South Wales, if you know that area at all. But yeah, so it is about August, who is from that part of the world, and she has moved away as a young woman and gone to university and moved to London, and now she's come home because her grandfather has died, and it is following her coming home and her trying to kind of figure out her place in the world, figure out what she wants to do, who she wants to be. When she comes back for the funeral, but she also comes back to find that there is a mine that is being created near her home, and well, it's going to be part of her home, so her family is being uprooted and moved off the land. But of course, her family's connection to the land is very important to her family. It's very important to her culture. So that is not something that's a part of the story, is to do with land rights and the importance of country for Aboriginal culture. Which I thought was really, really well done. We actually follow 3 points of view. So that is August's point of view, and it is written in regular prose. We then have sections of like a dictionary, which the grandfather was putting together. So he's writing a dictionary of the Aboriginal language from the area, and as part of the dictionary, so it has like a dictionary. It has, I don't know how well you can see that, but it says, for example, searching, looking around, which is, I'm going to struggle with the pronunciation, I'm very sorry, Naga Ban Ga Na, and then it has a bit of an explanation as to what the words mean, but also kind of how it relates to him. So it says, searching, looking around, Naga Ban Gana. When I turned 15 and was too old for the boys' home, I was a ward of the state, still working the local properties. At 19, I was issued my dog tag. With it, I could travel in a certain distance to work for meat and salt on the field or out mustering. I moved around far and wide looking for work, but I was looking mostly for home. So those sections where he's writing the dictionary have little sections about his life as someone who was part of the stolen generation, who was taken from his Aboriginal family and put, in this particular instance, into a mission, how that affected him and his life and what was going on there. And then the third point of view is from a reverend who was one of the first white people in the area, who was the person that created the mission, and they're in the form of letters to someone, I can't remember who, but those sections are in the form of letters and describing the formation of this mission and what he wanted to do with it and why he was doing it. He thought that he was doing something that was going to be really beneficial for the Indigenous population of the area, and he thought that it was going to save them from other ways that Aboriginal people were treated. It's really interesting because it shows that even the most well-meaning of people who work within that sort of racist system. They might be well-meaning, but he was still creating a mission, and he was still taking people, Aboriginal people, from their land and from their families and putting them into this mission, and then enforcing Christian beliefs and values and culture onto them and taking their own culture away from them. So he thought he was doing the right thing, because otherwise, under white government and white culture, they were not doing well as a society. But yeah, it was just really really hard-hitting, actually, but really well written and beautifully written. Very, still, again, not lyrical, but very kind of poetic in a way, and just beautiful writing style. Absolutely beautiful writing style. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. Like I said, it was quite hard-hitting, but it was really fantastic and definitely well worth a read. So that was a total lie. That wasn't the final thing I read in the month of April, because I have one more thing to talk about, and that is Jingo by Terry Pratchett. I don't know how I forgot this one, but I didn't put it in my journal, which is, I guess, why I forgot to talk about it. But I've remembered now, so thank goodness for that. Anyway, I actually listened to this on audiobook, which again, as you know, I'm not a huge audiobook reader, but I've read Jingo a number of times, so I felt like I could listen to it on audio. Part of the reason why I don't tend to listen to audiobooks is I do find that I find it difficult to concentrate, but because I've read this one so many times, it wasn't a problem. So Jingo is the third book in the Watch series, which is one of the series in the overarching Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. So the Discworld is a flat, round world that travels on the back of 4 giant turtles, giant elephants, who travel on the back of this great sky turtle Atuan through space. And this Discworld series is about all the different peoples and things that happen on the disc. So this is, like I said, the third book in the City Watch series. It's my favourite Pratchett book. I don't really know why, but I just love it. We follow the Watch. It is a story about an island that suddenly appears in the sea, in the middle of kind of the space between the sea, in the middle between Ankh-Morpork and Clatch. So Ankh-Morpork and Clatch both are trying to say that it's their island. So they start a war to take control over Leshp. And it's about that. It's about war, it's about the Watch, it's about a crime, it's about a conspiracy to start a war, and yeah, it's really well written, very much with Terry Pratchett's very irreverent style of writing. So it's a fantasy book. Like I said, it's set on a fantasy world, the Discworld. Pratchett kind of uses this setting to talk about our society and the way that we live our lives and the way that we, how we live and what our belief structures and everything. And I just really enjoy this one. I think it is absolutely fantastic. I don't know what I gave it because I haven't figured all that out in Core but definitely one of my favourite books of all time and definitely one of my favourite books of the month. So that's that one. But that is, in fact, all the books that I've read in the month of April. So yeah, that's everything. If you have any thoughts on any things that I talked about today, if you've read any of the books that I read, you gave them a different rating, higher, lower, what have you, please comment all of that below and let me know. Have you watched the Heartstopper TV show? Are you completely obsessed with it in the way that I am? Please let me know that as well. If you would like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me some kind of bird emoji, because we have these pelicans flying around on the cover of The Yield. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go and follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.